Welcome to the FAFSA line-by-line training. My name is Christina Winstead. I'm the Program Associate for Outreach at the Washington Student Achievement Council, and I work with the 12th Year Campaign. Today we're going to talk about 2021 FAFSA changes. This includes 2018 tax form changes, which have resulted in some questions being deleted, added, or combined. They'll be in a little bit different format, but you're going to see that further on in our presentation as we go through the line-by-line. The Student Aid Report will now be available on My Student App mobile. So when you go into the mobile app, you will need to update the mobile app for the 2021 application. If you do not do this, you will not see the 2021 application. You will just see the 1920 application. Last year, students were unable to receive their SAR through the mobile app, but this year they'll be able to receive it as soon as they submit their application. Currently, federal student aid is working with the IRS to make the data retrieval tool more mobile responsive. So right now, currently, the mobile responsive application for the FAFSA is available, but when you transfer to the data retrieval tool, the IRS is not mobile responsive. You'll notice this on your tablets and on your phone, and they are working to try to get this so that both sites are mobile responsive, so that when you use a mobile device, a phone, a tablet, that the pages will be responsive. Right now, we know it looks a little different when you go to the IRS, and they are working on it. We are aware of that challenge. Also, for students that are using the My Mobile app for the FAFSA, they will not be able to create their FSA ID on the app. They will have to do their FSA ID on the website, but there is a link on there. Make sure that students are completing the correct FAFSA. So when they go to the My Student app, they want to complete the 2021 FAFSA if they're a senior this year. So some common FAFSA mistakes include legal information. So if a student has their social security card with them, we encourage them to put in everything as it's listed on their card. This is not a time to put nicknames in. This is a time to put your legal name in. They want to make sure students complete the correct FAFSA year for the year that they're going to school. So if they are graduating with the class of 2020, they're going to complete the 2021 FAFSA. I know that sounds super futuristic, but it is the year that they will be attending college. So we want to make sure they complete the correct one. If a student completes the incorrect FAFSA, the 1920 FAFSA, I encourage you to help your student renew their application by clicking on Renew and then starting the 2021 FAFSA. This will import information from their 1920 FAFSA into their 2021 FAFSA. Whenever that happens, I just tell the student, you just did a practice FAFSA, now we're going to do the real one. So tax information is another common mistake. Students will sometimes put in their parents' tax information as their own. So maybe the parent made $43,000 this year, and then the student will put down their income as $43,000. Now, all of a sudden, the household income is $86,000 instead of $43,000. So we want to make sure that students, when they are entering their information, they ask for the student's tax information and then the parent's tax information. Another way to make this easier is to use the data retrieval tool to have your taxes imported right into the FAFSA. The student marital status is another challenge. So students will read through this, and it says three options: you're single, married, divorced, or widowed. And students who are in relationships have come to me and said, but I'm dating someone. Totally, we understand, but you're not married. And so if they are not married, they're going to pick single. I had a student tell me the other day, but I'm dating someone. I just need something else, another option. And unfortunately, the only options are single, married, or divorced, or widowed. And so unless they put a ring on it, unfortunately, they need to put single. Student household size will be the size of the student's household. Typically, if the student doesn't have dependents, this will be a household of one. Therefore, their household of people in college will be a 100%, so one person in college, and then that's a one person in the household. For the parent's household, it'll be the parent's dependents. Students find challenges in figuring out who their parent is for FAFSA purposes. So this looks different than maybe what a parenting plan looks like or what taxes look like. What we're most concerned about, and you can see here in this flowchart, is that we are looking to see if a parent is divorced, it's whoever the student is living with the most. So if parents are divorced or separated or not living together, they are going to list the parent they live with the most. If the parents are unmarried, separated, or divorced, and still living together, they're going to list both parents. For remarried parents, it's going to be the parent that they live with the most and the step-parent. Both will be listed on taxes. And if they're married, it's both parents. If the parent is single or a surviving parent or widowed, then it's just going to be the single-parent income. I encourage you, when you're having a financial aid night, please print this infographic, which is located on our website as well as on the Federal Student Aid website. This infographic, if you take and print it and put it on the chairs at your financial aid event, you can let families determine what their family status is without having to ask critical questions. When applying for FAFSA, there are 3 ways to apply. Students can apply on the website, they can apply through the FAFSA app on their phone, and then there's also a paper application. The paper application is typically commonly used for incarcerated youth, youth who do not have access to the internet. We know that that is a challenge for youth who are incarcerated currently who have college plans, and so we have already worked with some of the schools to send information out, but that is typically a longer way to have your application completed. We encourage you to apply through the website or through the app. When you're working on the app, you can only have one person in the app at a time. So this is the FAFSA.gov page. We encourage you to make sure you're looking at the correct website when applying for financial aid. FAFSA.gov is the correct website for the FAFSA. Please do not go to other FAFSA web pages that may charge you a cost, typically $80, to complete the application. This is the free application for aid, not the $80 application for aid. If you think you're on the wrong site, please pause and go back and look and make sure at FAFSA.gov. Your first step to applying for financial aid is your FSA ID. You're going to want to create an FSA ID. This is your username and password. Back in the day, we had the PIN. This is replacing that PIN system that maybe parents had previously. If you've already created an FSA ID for a different student, for yourself, you only create one FSA ID. That's it. You don't have to create an FSA ID for each child that you have. Each person will have one FSA ID, and they will use that to sign their applications. This can be used to sign your own application, or if you're a parent, you can sign your own application or your student's application. To be able to use your FSA ID, you're going to need your social security number, your date of birth, your legal name, and you're going to create some passwords. You're also going to create some challenge questions. Students, I encourage you to write down your challenge questions. You can use the 12th year campaign workbook for students, and it has an FSA ID worksheet right inside for you to write down your answers so that you do not forget the answers to your challenge questions. Also, this is a legal document. We encourage you to take your time and make sure you're entering the information correctly. It takes about 10 minutes to complete an FSA ID, but if you do it incorrectly and have to have the information separated by a federal student aid, so if you put the wrong social security number in or the wrong name, that can take longer. We also encourage you in this process to verify your information so that your email is verified. Once you have your FSA ID, you're going to log into the FAFSA. If you're the student, you're going to click on the left. If you're a parent, a preparer, that's someone who gets paid to complete financial aid applications, or a student from a freely associated state like the Marshall Islands, you're going to click on the right. If you don't have an FSA ID and want to log in with your student identifiers, this includes your social security number, your name, and your birthday, you'll click on student identifiers. But we encourage students to log in with their FSA ID because when you do this, it imports your information from the FSA ID into the initial application. You can use your username, your verified email address, or your verified phone number. Your next step will be read through this disclaimer. Once you're done, you're just going to click Accept. Again, the most common error in the financial aid application is completing the incorrect FAFSA year. We want to make sure every student completes the correct FAFSA for the year that they're going to school. Again, if your student is going to graduate with the class of 2020, they're going to complete the 2021 FAFSA, and that is the link right there on the left. They either can renew their FAFSA or start a new FAFSA. So if they've never started a FAFSA before, they're going to click Start a new FAFSA. If they've completed an application previously, they'll click on Renewal. The next step is for the student to create a save key. Typically, this is a 4-digit number that the student's going to remember by the time they're done completing the application. If the student completes their portion of the application and requires parental information, the parent will need to have the save key in order to enter that information. The next step will walk you through how the 2021 application is going to be completed, how many steps, how long it takes. On average, it takes about an hour, what documents you need, how to sign it, and it also talks about web security and privacy. You can click on each one of these to expand and read more about each topic. The next step is to enter personal identifying information for the student. If you've completed your FSA ID and logged in with your FSA ID, then this information will be pre-populated with the information you provided. If you signed in with student identifying information, you will have to enter this in yourself. Please verify that the information is correct before clicking Next. Next, you're going to enter your student email and phone number. Remember, if you're a high school student using a high school email address, after you graduate, typically you will lose access to that email address. Please enter in an email address that is not tied to your school that you will have access to after you graduate. This is also a great time to make sure that your email address is appropriate, professional, and maybe will not make an admissions officer blush. You will also want to enter in the next page your student address. Your permanent mailing address is where you're going to be able to receive mail during the admissions and financial aid process. We know that your permanent mailing address may change as you attend school, so please make sure you update this information every year that you apply for financial aid. Next, it's going to ask you for residency information. This is going to determine your eligibility for the FAFSA. It's going to ask if you lived in the state for 5 years and if you're a U.S. citizen. Next, you're going to be asked for student education information. This includes the high school you attended, which college degree or certificate you're working towards, if you've completed a bachelor's before you start the 2021 school year, and then it's also going to ask a really important question about work study. Work study is an awesome opportunity for you to be able to work on a campus while going to school. Work study jobs are a great way to get some work experience, work on a campus, but also work in an environment that is supportive of your educational goals. I know a lot of students will see this and think work and study does not sound fun, but they are great jobs, and we encourage you to select yes when being considered for work study. Some schools will not consider you for work study if you check I don't know. If you select yes on being considered for a work study and are selected for work study but decide not to do the work study program, you can always decline your award. The next question is going to ask about gender, and this is because of selective service. So if you select male, it's going to ask if you have signed up for selective service. If you haven't, you will have the option to be enrolled in selective service at the end of the application. If you have a driver's license, you'll enter this information in here. If you don't, that's okay. Just leave the information blank and go on to the next question. The next question is going to ask if you've ever been enrolled in foster care. It'll also ask about your parents' education level. This helps us identify students that may be eligible for different resources on their campuses. The next question is going to ask about student eligibility for financial aid. It's going to ask if you've ever received financial aid before. And it'll ask if you've received financial aid before if you've ever had a drug conviction while receiving financial aid. Go through these questions and it'll determine if you're eligible for this financial aid year. After you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and select your high school. You can enter high school information and then confirm your high school, as you can see here on the right side of the page. This helps us make sure that your high school is identified correctly, as we know some high schools have multiple names. Once you've entered your high school, now's the fun part. You get to select your colleges. You can pick up to 10 colleges to have your information sent to for financial aid. All you have to do is select the state of the college, the city that it's in if you know it, or the school's name, and it will pull up the federal school code. If you already know your federal school code, you can click on the federal school code and enter that number in there. After you've selected your school, it's going to ask about your housing plans while attending college. You can select between on campus, with a parent, or off campus. If there's any way, shape, or form that you will be attending on campus, we encourage you to select on campus so that the funding is correct. Once you've selected your college, you can view college information through College Scorecard. Just select on the college, and it'll tell you information like the address, how much it costs, graduation rates, and transfer rates. This should be available for each college you select. Once you've selected your colleges, it's going to ask the student marital status. Again, it's going to ask for the marital status of the student as of today. If the student is single, they will select single. Next, it will determine if the student has dependents. These are human dependents that receive more than half their support from them between 2020 and 2021. I say that because I've had students before select non-human dependents, and the federal government does not accept those as dependent applications for the FAFSA. We know that having pets are expensive, but unfortunately, they do not count as dependents. Once you select your dependents, it'll show you what your household size is. Then you can enter the number of people from your household that will be attending college. For the student, typically the household will be a size of 1, and then they'll select that one member of their household going to college, which means 100% of their student household is attending college. Next, the FAFSA will determine your dependency status. Most students will be considered dependent until their age of 24. If you're considered independent, your screen will look like this. It's going to ask if you want to provide parental information. If you are independent, you do not have to provide parental information. You can select no and move on to the next step. Since most students are considered dependent, they will need to provide parental information. If a student's unable to provide parental information, they unfortunately will only be eligible for unsubsidized loans. If a student's unable to provide parental information because of a special circumstance, they will want to make sure they note that on the application. There is a checkbox for that circumstance, and then they can talk to a financial aid officer. When it says I'm unable to provide information about my parents, it means not in this moment, but that you overall cannot provide information about your parents. So for students completing the application at a financial aid night whose parents aren't attending, please select I will provide parental information and then have your parents add that information after the fact. If you select I'm unable to provide parent information because they're just not with you and you're not going to get it in that day, unfortunately what that does is it triggers you to be provided just with unsubsidized loans. Now most of your student information has been completed and you'll want to start entering parent information. The first question is going to ask about your parents' marital status. It's important to have your parents work on this application with you because they'll be asking for financial information in addition to a demographic information. Here's another way to determine who your parent is for FAFSA purposes. You also have the spreadsheet available for you in that infographic. I encourage you to use these tools to determine who your parent is so that you can have the correct information while completing the application. If your parent does not have a Social Security number, they can enter zeros in the Social Security number box. Please do not have a parent enter their tax ID numbers in this box. They must enter zeros instead of a Social Security number. If their parent does have a Social Security number, then they're going to enter their Social Security number in these boxes. Next, it's going to ask about the parent's state of residence. It'll ask if the parent has lived in Washington for at least the last 5 years. After that, it's going to determine household size. Parents will enter in the number of their dependents. This can include the student, as the student can be the parent's dependent. They will also enter in the number of people who will be attending college from the parent's household size in the school year 2021. Next, we'll be asking for parent tax information. If a family hasn't filed 2018 taxes, but they plan to file in the future, they can select Will File in this process. They'll have to select OK to continue, and they can use their W-2s to estimate their income before they complete their tax return. If a family has completed their tax return, it's going to ask which application they used and information about the parent's application, including how they filed. This will help determine if they can use the data retrieval tool. If you're unable to use the data retrieval tool, you'll have to manually enter your tax information. Parents will want to use their 2018 taxes. When they enter in the tax form they've used for their 2018 taxes, it will prompt them with the lines that will correspond to the information they're asking for. As you can see here, the adjusted gross income on a 1040 is a line 7. Students can then look at line 7 on those taxes and enter it in. Next, it's going to ask for parent income, which will be found on tax forms as well. It'll also ask for the amount of taxes paid by the parent. Next, we're going to ask for information for parents who have filed taxes only. If your parent has not filed taxes, they will not be asked these questions. These questions pertain to the 2018 tax year. It'll ask questions about untaxed income, taxed income, additional income that may not have been listed on the application. This includes additional parent financial information, taxable earnings from need-based programs, federal work study, cooperative education programs, child support. All of these will need to be entered. If you have a question about what they're asking, you can always hover over the question mark in the blue circle, and it will provide additional information about the question. Finally, it's going to start asking about untaxed income. This includes child support that's been received. This does not include foster care or adoption payments, housing, and other expenses that may be paid for through clergy or military, as well as veterans benefits. Of course, this process is a lot easier if you go ahead and use the data retrieval tool. You can link to the IRS, and what will end up happening is they will import the information from your 2018 taxes right into the application. As you do this, it'll let you know that you're leaving FAFSA on the web and going to the IRS page. You will enter your information. You have to enter it exactly as listed on your taxes, and it'll import the information into your application. That information will be masked, which means no one can see the information other than when they transmit the application to the schools. If you're planning on using the data retrieval tool, there will be an outage on October 6th. It will be unavailable from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday, October 6th due to maintenance. You can still complete a financial aid during this time, but you will be unable to access the data retrieval tool. To access the data retrieval tool, you'll want to enter in your first and last name, your date of birth, and then the street address from your 2018 taxes, exactly as listed on the taxes. This includes periods, spaces, capitalization. Any variation on these will be incorrect if it's not exactly listed as on the taxes. This is the most common challenge in entering your information in to access the data retrieval tool. The next step is to enter parent assets. Assets include cash, savings, and checking accounts. Investments will include real estate, trust funds, CDs, and it also includes your 529 plans. If a parent is the owner of a 529 college savings plan, they will enter this as an investment here. If the student is the owner of the account, they will enter it as their own investment. They will also want to show if they have a business with more than 100 employees, they will enter the information down below. If you have a business or farm with less than 100 employees, you will leave this information blank. After parent financial information has been entered, it's the student's turn. You'll be entering in all of your student information from your taxes. If you didn't file taxes, that's okay. You can go ahead and select not going to file. If you did file taxes, please select the correct tax year and application that you used. It's going to ask the same questions that the parents were asked. It's going to ask if you've earned any wages in 2018, and if you did earn wages in 2018 but didn't pay taxes, you will enter them in here. Next, we'll be asking for additional financial information from students, including child support, as well as cooperative education programs offered by colleges that they have maybe participated in, and taxable earnings from need-based programs. Again, if you have any questions about this process, you can always hover above one of those question marks in the blue circle, and it will clarify the question they're asking. And finally, it's going to ask the student, as of today, what their total cash balances of cash, checking, and savings. It's going to ask about their investments, and if they own a business or farm with more than 100 employees. Finally, you'll get your FAFSA summary. This will tell you all the information that you've entered into the application. Please review this information for accuracy. This is the final time you'll have to be able to fix information on your application before submitting it. Finally, you're going to sign your application. Students can sign with their FSA ID, and since they typically will log into the FAFSA with their FSA ID, all they have to do is enter their information. For parents, they'll enter their FSA ID and click Sign. Once you click Submit, you'll be able to see your confirmation page. This includes information on the status of your application, as well as information about your student aid report. For example, here you can see this application was processed successfully. You will also receive this information in an email. If you find errors, you can correct your application 48 hours after you submit it. The student aid report gives you additional information about the schools you applied to, your financial aid history information, and your estimated family contribution. If you have to make a correction on your FAFSA, don't worry, you can always make corrections. The page is going to look a little different when you log in. It's going to look like the FAFSA from a couple years ago. They're in the process of web mobilizing these applications as well, but it will show a little different. So when you log in for a correction, it's going to look more like this. Finally, you can see here the financial aid process. After you apply for financial aid, of course, don't forget to apply for college admissions. You want to apply for at least 3 schools, a reach, a target, and a safety. You'll also be asked typically for additional financial aid information. This can include a data sheet from a community college or sometimes verification information from other institutions. After that, the colleges will inform you of college acceptance. They will also send you an award letter letting you know how much money they can offer you for school. Then you'll need to respond to those documents by the date listed on them. And if you are going through a loan process, you will start that as well. And then you will receive your financial aid money. When you are receiving your aid, there will be a date listed for disbursement. Please check with your school to see when your funds will be dispersed. Finally, we have the FAFSA demo site. The FAFSA demo site allows you to access the FAFSA without actually accessing a student's application. This is a great way to play around in the FAFSA and get used to the application without having to do an application of your own. Please feel free to use the preloaded applications for 1920 or 2021. Thank you so much for joining us for this FAFSA line by line. If you have any questions, please feel free to go to FAFSA.gov, and you can also find resources on readysetgrad.wa.gov.